For Ned Bell, the accolades came early and often. Best overall rising star, one of the top 40 foodies under 20, ambassador for ocean-wise sustainable fish, an executive chef at some of British Columbia's very best restaurants. But who is the man behind all this fame? What drives him? Ned, your culinary adventure, journey, career started when you were quite young. As a kid, apparently you would cook for your brothers.
I did. I have two siblings, one brother, one sister. And my parents, geez, we're going to get right into it. My parents divorced when I was 12. I was the oldest. And my mom was out working hard to put a roof over our head and food on the table. And quite honestly, I got tired of eating frozen Costco lasagna. So I started cooking for my brother and sister. And I guess, that's really one of the first opportunities that I had to recognize how important food was at bringing our family together. And then shortly thereafter, my first job was washing dishes at a little restaurant in Kerrisdale called the Avenue Grill.
Oh, remember it.
Yeah, and my mom, I remember she dropped me off at the front door and she said, if you still want expensive jeans from Hills of Kerrisdale, which was across the street, you better go get a job so you can help pay for some of them. So I started washing dishes and almost immediately fell in love with hospitality and fell in love with, I guess, the family aspect of hospitality, having a broken home, so to speak, a fantastic upbringing, but a broken home, really, I guess, left some things to be desired. And so food brought it all together for me, and I just love what I do.
And it's not an easy life. I mean, being a chef, you think of those hours, late nights. Did you find it hard?
Absolutely. I am an alcoholic who hasn't had a drink in 13 years, and proud of that. And, it was definitely part of the industry that brought you, that sort of sucked you in, so to speak, and I have seen so many of my peers not come back from that, whether it's alcoholism or broken marriages or broken relationships or, fragmented, parental children relationships. It just is not an easy industry to it doesn't bode well for quality of life, I think, unless you have yourself focused on. It doesn't really get much better than that.
So is alcohol one of the ways you could relieve some of the stress of those late nights, hard hours, hard on your family?
Absolutely. I mean, when you're young in your 20s, you're going out after work, your shift ends at 10 or 11 or 12 and you're going out until, 1 or 2 in the morning. And of course, then you're waking up again and doing it all over again and working 12, 14-hour days for, eventually come along with it. And, truthfully, I remember specifically, I'm married to a fantastic woman. Her name is Kate. And, after one more late night of me coming home, and her asking me why I was home late again, I said, well, a VIP just really wanted to share a bottle of wine with me. And, I have to be there for the VIPs. And she looked at me and she said, when are we going to be the VIPs?
Ooh.
And I have never forgotten it because it was so true and so raw. And, it took it. My parents are alcoholics, recovered. My grandparents were alcoholics, not really recovered. I mean, alcohol is prominent in culture, and I'm not afraid to speak of it honestly because I've seen it destroy so many families.
So what was the moment for you, because you said so many others got into that life and didn't pull out? Was there a moment? I think it's almost a badge of honor to sort of be, a bit of a bad boy chef. And of course, it was, I should say, and it's no longer.
But for years and years, we put bad boy chefs on television and sort of idolized them. And, unfortunately, a few of the most famous are no longer with us. Alcohol can be something you can enjoy, but definitely not something that should dominate your life.
Success came so early to you. The number of awards you've received, you've been on television programs, you're culinary ambassador, especially when you're young. Did that go to your head?
Of course. I have an ego. I remember the first national food review I got was by a journalist from the Globe and Mail, Joanne Cates, who was very famous. And I slept out overnight to wait for the newspaper to be delivered to the newspaper box,
Yes.
And I think that the celebrity chef moniker is equally half of what's wrong with our industry, because we are blue-collar tradespeople and we should be proud of that. Goodness is what's more important to me. So ego definitely got the better of me early on, but that was immaturity. And, I've never met a television camera or microphone I don't like.
Explain to me how your very early interest in sustainability with foods developed, because you were talking about it way before the press was, environmentalists were. It was important to you.
Well, my parents were both hippies. They decided to move up here. My dad was a hippie. He was one of the first hydroponic tomato farmers in the Okanagan. Pretty sure he was growing other things hydroponically in the early 70s. Food, my crib was the bottom of a cherry box. Literally we were peaches falling from the trees, apples falling from the trees, cherries, that were part of our life. Food was just part of my life from the very, very beginning. So I guess early days, that was the inspiration, was where I came from, who I came from. And then falling into food at a young age, 13, 14, 15, 16, it just seemed natural because we live in British Columbia. We live on the ocean. We live in, the Fraser Valley or the Peace Country or the Okanagan Valley. Like, food is everywhere. And how lucky are we? And so I think its provenance, where it comes from, who fished it, who farmed it, who grew it, what it is, diversity within and underneath that, was just natural. It wasn't something that I decided to do. It was just who we were.
It wasn't because all of a sudden you saw the salmon fishery lessening or anything when you were on the journey.
My great-grandmother is from Buren, Newfoundland. And so Newfoundland is a big part of our family's heritage as we came to Canada. And the cod fishery collapsed in Newfoundland in the early 90s. And that just devastated small communities in and around Newfoundland and people that we knew. And unfortunately, the same thing is happening to the wild BC salmon species here on the West Coast as we speak, and has been for decades. And I think for me as a chef, I've been a chef for 35 years. It's a long time that we have been committed to the ecosystem. And I'm young in the journey, but people like Chef Rob Clark, people like David Suzuki.
So what do you think the fundamental problem is? Is it overfishing or is it over-consuming?
Consumption is complicated. Consumption is complicated, whether it's, nutrient-dense plant-based ingredients with sustainability as the garnish, which is sort of what I believe now. But when I first started cooking, a 10-ounce steak, mashed potatoes, and overcooked asparagus, that was dinner, right? That was what we grew up with, meat and potatoes, so to speak. North Americans are creatures of habit. They want, square chunks of flavorless protein, some sort of recognizable starch, and a relatively easy vegetable. Well, that's not the way that Mother Nature gives us her ingredients. There's all kinds of, there's 10,000 edible plants in the ocean. We could be eating incredibly diverse diets, but North Americans are fairly, vanilla, let's say. Well, cultural influence over the last 50 years in British Columbia and in Canada has made our foods more delicious, brought in flavors from around the world, brought in thinking of different things that we could and should be eating. And that's just diversity. And I think that we can, will, and have had an impact, and we need to continue to make great choices when it comes to the foods that's on our dinner tables. Because if we don't, Mother Nature is not going to be able to keep up with how we continue to hammer her.
So consumption's one part of it. What about the overfishing story in terms of the wild salmon stock, for instance? How do you feel about fish farming?
Yeah, well, firstly, I'm deeply committed to the king and queen of seafood here in British Columbia, which is our wild Pacific salmon. The only place on the planet that has 5 unique species of wild Pacific salmon is British Columbia. And aren't we lucky? And don't we want to do everything to protect that species and the ecosystem that surrounds it? We are resource extractors. We mine, we cut down trees, and we fish. And that's, we do many other things. But, if you think about what we do, we take, and we take, and we take, and we value what we're taking. And unfortunately, we take too much, and we continue to take too much. Overfishing and climate change are the 2 largest threats that face our world's oceans. So, what does that mean? Well, I still want to eat seafood. I look forward to still being able to eat seafood. But I'm also of the mindset I would rather stop eating seafood for 10 years or stop eating specific seafoods for a period of time to allow that resource to recover to then be able to eat it again. It kind of like taking a break, so to speak. Because we have to take care of our commercial fishers, we have to take care of our tourism industry, our sport fishing industry, which is tourism loosely. Well, not loosely, it is. And then eating things. People that tell me they don't eat farmed fish, I say to them, well, that's your prerogative. Aquaculture represents about 60% of the seafood that we consume in North America. And hey, when's the last time you had wild chicken? Right? We don't eat wild animals. We long ago stopped eating wild animals. We farm raise animals mostly responsibly for our consumption. Aquaculture is part of the solution, done well in the right places. For me as a chef, I'm trying to be, okay, wild fish, farmed fish. I'm in here in the middle. I want to pull these guys in to do a better job. I want to pull these guys in to do a better job. Because wild fish is not perfect either.
So interesting to hear that you're not just flat out, I'm against any farmed fish, because there are people out there saying that, which tends to lock off a lot of aquaculture.
Well, we have a very passionate activist society in British Columbia when it comes to aquaculture. And unfortunately, a lot of people's beliefs may not be as current as they should be. When we started farming fish here in British Columbia 40 years ago, we didn't do a very good job of it. Absolutely true. Where we put the farms, how we raised them, what we fed them. But the industry has worked incredibly hard to continually improve the what, the where, the how, and the when. And as has the wild fish industry, the commercial fishing industry. We need, in my opinion, as chefs, we have an opportunity to talk about what's on the center of our plate or the side of our plate, that piece of protein, whether it's, beef, my beef comes from, northern Okanagan, grass-fed, grain-finished. My chicken is from the Fraser Valley. My pork is from the Fraser Valley. Know the provenance of your ingredients, and I think you're going to do yourself some favors about understanding the complications that are or can be consumption. David Suzuki, who is a peer and a friend, we don't see eye to eye when it comes to wild fish and aquaculture, but we've had many a conversation around it. But I think there's another conversation to be had as well, is feeding humans, and we need to do that in a way that is responsible for today and allows us to have access to those ingredients into the future.
You speak so passionately about it. You must be loving being the face of Ocean Wise, the ambassador for Ocean Wise.
Yeah. Well, I'm very fortunate. Ocean Wise is a dear partner of mine, and chef ambassador of Ocean Wise, and of course also the chef ambassador for the province of BC through the By BC program, which is a wonderful opportunity for me to have conversations around our food systems in this province and the incredible communities and farmers and fishers that are putting food on our tables, healthy food on our tables, for the last 150 years and hopefully for the next 150 years and beyond. And, farmers and fishers are my heroes. I mean, they literally are my heroes.
And of course, your entire career and all these experiences led you to becoming involved in this beautiful Naramata Inn.
Yes.
Now, tell me the story of it. When did you first think about actually doing this?
Yeah, well, it's my wife and I and our business partner, Paul, and his wife, Maria. Paul knew that Kate and I met in the Okanagan. We married here in Naramata, just up the road. Celebrated our 10th wedding anniversary here a number of years ago. And Paul has been a mentor of mine for a long, long time. And he called me one day and he said, "Hey, pal, what do you think we take a run at the Naramata Inn?" And at the time, my wife had been on the tail end of a breast cancer journey, and we didn't really know it at the time, but we're sort of interested in what was going to be next for our family and living in Vancouver. And we discussed it and decided to take the leap of faith and move back up here. And it's been an incredible journey. It is certainly, we bought it in February of 2020. And so
take note of the date.
Take note of the date, because March, the world changed. Opening a business in the middle of a pandemic is not easy. And of course, we're not alone in how it impacted, British Columbians or Canadians or global citizens for that matter. But being in this wonderful little village it was such an opportunity for us to sort of sink our teeth into this place.
One of the things that I loved on the back of your menu is you list your preferred suppliers, I believe you say, and you tell their story, whether it's beef or vegetables or mushrooms or whatever. You're building these relationships that support the local community.
Our farmers and artisans are everything. I mean, our food wouldn't exist without them. We are here to tell the story of what they're doing and the care and love that they put into their ingredients, whether it's, cows raised on pasture in the North Okanagan, or fish that's farmed in the middle of an apple orchard down in Oliver, BC, or, our incredible fruit and vegetable growers here in Naramata and the South Okanagan. And, we feel really fortunate that we don't use lemons or limes. We don't use anything that isn't grown here. And that's a real commitment to this place. We call that a taste of place. And you can only have this dinner here. We love that.
Yeah, I remember reading you saying something like, "Wow, it's been a roller coaster ride."
Yes. It's
ups and downs.
Well, the pandemic, none of us would have planned to open a business, during the pandemic, and then to open a seasonal business during the pandemic was, equally difficult. And then to have the labor shortage, unprecedented labor shortage, it's just sort of been one thing after the next. I've been working in this business for so long. You just dig in, you just roll up your sleeves, and what's the task or the challenge today? And I don't know of anybody in any craft or profession that isn't similar. If they want to, reach the top, they're gonna roll up their sleeves and dig in. I'm sure you've had similar journeys, experiences in your life where this isn't meant to be easy, because if it was easy, everybody would do it.
And never give up.
Absolutely. I'm a middle-aged guy. I love what I do. I live in British Columbia. I'm Canadian. My life is pretty fantastic. I give up. No way. Give me more. I'm digging in, I can't wait for what's next.
So about what's next, how do you see yourself? Where do you see yourself in 5 years, maybe 10?
I experienced something with my wife's cancer treatments that really started me on the path of thinking about what is healthcare's food impact on culture and society. And I know I'm not the only one, but if you think about real food heals. Food is medicine if you think about it in lots of ways. And I wonder if maybe I could spend some time in that world and learn and maybe impart some wisdom in healthcare. I don't think I want to be chained to one stove for the rest of my career. I think I'm at a point now where maybe education and inspiring the next generations of culinarians is important to me. So, yeah, healthcare, continued sustainability, local food system champion. That's sort of what I think the next 15 to 20 years might look like.
That's interesting you say that, because I was going to say to you, you've had all these different roles, executive chef of Four Seasons, major restaurants, you've been the ambassador, you've talked about sustainability, and I was going to say to you, but are you happiest in front of the stove? And maybe you're saying to me, well, it's bigger than that.
I mean, am I happiest? I am in front of my stove at home all day long. Like when I'm not here, I'm in my kitchen at home. I love being in front of food.
Are you experimenting? What are you doing?
It could just, I don't know, making my kids lunches, making dinner, I just need my hands to be busy in food. And I'm always interested in places that I visit or travel to, or culture, or, we just had this incredible Thai chef who did a collaboration with us, and learning about her food was unbelievable. I mentioned healthcare because I have, my parents are both in their late 70s, and, I'm interested in how to keep them as healthy as I can for the rest of their life. And, my grandfather, who was my absolute hero and number one, two grandfathers, but one was really, I was a little closer to, his diet at the end of his life was ice cream and scotch.
Okay.
Which is fine, but...
And he lived to 200 and what?
He lived till 88, 87. But his last years weren't healthy. And I think that food could have played a pivotal role in his journey. My father, who's 78, and I said has been a vegetarian for 40 years, but he looks like he's 58, because he has lived a very healthy kind of, I keep using the term hippie, but like that's type of vegetable forward, plant-based, planetary health life. And I wonder if there's a way that we can inspire, not eating things, just eating more of things. And so for me, that's nutrient-dense, plant-based ingredients, less reliance on animal protein as the dominant thing on our plate, more as animal protein as the garnish. Premium sustainable premium animal protein as the garnish. So I think, I don't dislike being chained to the stove, but I don't want to only be chained to one stove. I love being in the kitchen. I truly love what I do. I feel very fortunate. It's given me everything. It's given me security. It's given me, a fantastic marriage and great children, and, financial stability. And, I'm just a cook at the end of the day. Got lucky, I guess.
Thank you, Ned.
Thank you, Carol.
Ned Bell, a BC legend.